You wake up, cold. Not, oh no, I forgot to turn the heating on, cold. More like, my bones are negotiating a mutiny, cold. The kind of cold that makes your skin feel like it's been replaced with thin parchment. You blink a few times and try to move your foot, only to realize, yes, congratulations, it hurts. Badly. A sharp, unforgiving pain that screams bad life choices were made last night. You try to remember how you got here, but your brain is approximately 3 hours behind your body. You look around and realize you're not in your apartment, not in your bed, not even in a tent at a medieval-themed Renaissance fair. You're lying on a coarse straw mat inside what appears to be a dim, damp structure made entirely of wood, moss, and questionable decision-making. You've been transported, somehow, to a medieval village in, let's say, 1320. Because if you're going to sprain an ankle, it may as well be during the peak of feudalism. Your foot is throbbing like it's auditioning to be a war drum. Swollen, red, and already starting to turn that slightly unsettling shade of purplish-green. You try standing. That was a mistake. Gravity reminds you that medieval medicine is basically a Pinterest board of herbs, bleeding, and hope. You sit back down, your leg now a dramatic symbol of everything that's about to go terribly, terribly wrong. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoyed this weird blend of dark humor, historic suffering, and bedtime storytelling. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is, because, honestly, I love knowing if you're falling asleep in Ohio at 2 a.m. or cooking soup in Sweden at 4 in the afternoon. Alright, now, back to your unfortunate foot. In the 14th century, medical care was about as scientific as asking your neighbor if they had any spare leeches. You're in a rural English village. The nearest university is miles away, and you can't read anyway. Literacy is reserved for monks, scribes, and that one weird guy in town who talks to goats and claims to have seen visions. You know the one. Your ankle is now the most exciting thing happening in your life, and possibly in the entire village. So someone, maybe your neighbor, maybe a goat, rushes to fetch the local wise woman, also known as the cunning woman. Not to be confused with a trained physician, because those were mostly in cities and cost more than your family earns in a year. The cunning woman is what you get when Google Translate turns medical professional into person who owns 7 different roots and a bucket. She arrives, covered in layers of wool that smell like old onions and despair. Her hands are stained with something green, which might be herbs, or mold, or a long-forgotten soup. She doesn't ask for consent. She just grabs your ankle and pokes it like she's checking the ripeness of a melon. She grunts. The spirits are restless. You're not sure what that means, but it probably isn't good. She begins mumbling incantations under her breath, pulls out a pouch filled with dried nettle and powdered bark, and starts applying something that smells like regret and vinegar to your ankle. It's cold, slimy, and somehow both gritty and sticky. She tells you not to move it, which, luckily, you weren't planning to do, because the pain now feels like someone jammed a fireplace poker directly into your soul. Now, you might be wondering, why not go to a doctor? Funny question. You're in 1320. A doctor is someone who speaks Latin, lives in a walled town, and treats illness with a mix of astrology and bloodletting. If you manage to get to one, their solution to your ankle sprain will probably involve making a chart of your birth star alignment, bleeding you with a rusty knife, and suggesting a purgative that causes violent expulsion of toxins. Translation: medieval diarrhea. So no, you're not going to a doctor. Instead, you get a poultice made of mashed roots, wrapped in linen that was last washed during the reign of King Edward I. It smells like turnips, but not the fresh kind. You're then instructed to keep your ankle elevated, which in this case means propping it on a log that's also being used by a chicken as a nap spot. You lie back and try to relax. There's a steady drip of something leaking from the ceiling, possibly rainwater, possibly someone else's chamber pot from upstairs. You don't ask. There's a rat in the corner, chewing something with uncomfortably enthusiastic crunching. You close your eyes, and the sound of a distant church bell reminds you that time is crawling, and there is still no ibuprofen. Just agony and damp wool. The woman finally leaves, muttering something about balancing humors. You didn't know you had humors, let alone that they needed balancing. Welcome to medieval medicine, where the body is basically a soup and everything bad is your fault for angering the cosmic stew. Now the villagers visit. Word spreads fast in a small place with no Netflix, no radio, and no shame. Everyone wants to see the person with the cursed foot. Children peek at you through the cracks in the door. Someone offers you a piece of barley bread as a peace offering. It's dry. So dry. It's like chewing a medieval kitchen sponge. You smile politely and take a bite, hoping it'll distract you from the dull ache in your ankle that's now become your full personality. The pain, you'll be told, is a sign of imbalance. You've likely offended a spirit or eaten too much of the cold foods. Maybe you got wet during the full moon or wore a left shoe before the right. Yes, those were all legitimate explanations. Medicine is less evidence-based and more superstition wrapped in guesswork, sprinkled with mold. And speaking of mold, penicillin hasn't been discovered yet. So if your sprained ankle gets infected, you're not just in pain. You're in trouble. The kind of trouble that ends with a priest and last rites. Which is why you'll now be made to drink a herbal concoction that tastes like betrayal and smells like old cabbage. You gag. It's fine. You're strong. You're a survivor. You've lasted 20 minutes in the Middle Ages and you haven't cried yet. Good job. Your treatment plan, if we can call it that, now involves two main goals: rest and the application of a rotating series of herbs, pastes, and charms. The charms include a piece of string blessed by a friar, a bone shard from some poor saint, and a tiny wooden carving of the Virgin Mary that might double as a spoon. They're hung around your neck to protect the limb. You now jingle slightly when you move. It's fine. It's fashion. Night falls. You're still in pain. But you've got a blanket. Well, a scratchy woolen thing that may or may not have fleas, and a roaring fire. Roaring in the medieval sense, meaning it's mostly just smoky and makes your eyes sting. The ceiling is low. The walls creak. Somewhere in the distance, a dog is barking at something that might be a ghost or just the concept of mortality. You shift in your spot, trying to find a position where the throbbing in your ankle doesn't feel like the earth itself is rejecting you. It doesn't work. You drift off for a while, only to wake up to a local priest muttering over you in Latin. He's been told you're cursed. He sprinkles holy water on your foot. It sizzles. Probably your imagination. Probably. The priest recommends prayer, abstinence from meat for a few days, and possibly donating a chicken to the church. Your ankle is now a holy problem. You are the village's theological test subject. Someone lights incense. Someone else sneezes. You think you hear a cow moo in agreement. The days go by. Slowly. Your foot begins to improve, if only because you've been lying still and not aggravating it. But the treatments keep coming. One day it's mashed garlic and pig fat. The next, it's ground up moss and honey, though the honey was expensive and is mostly beeswax with high hopes. You learn that the human ankle is, according to some 14th century texts, a seat of the wind. This is important, because the pain is believed to be trapped wind, like a very angry ghost that took up residence in your tendons. The cure? Cupping. Yes. Heated cups are placed around your calf, creating suction that feels like a medieval Dyson. You yelp. It's okay. They say that's normal. Pain is just weakness leaving the body, or possibly your soul trying to escape. Your family is supportive in the way medieval families are. Your sister brings you more barley bread. Your mother suggests you get up and walk it off. Your father tells you that when he sprained his ankle, he just cut it open and packed it with ash. It's not helpful. By the end of the week, you've endured everything from herbal foot baths to being lightly flogged by a birch branch to improve circulation. You've been spat on by a pilgrim, sniffed by a pig, and sung to by an old man named Elric who claims he used to be a knight. He wasn't. He was a sheep thief. But you don't argue. He has stories, and you're bored. Your ankle, miraculously, is beginning to heal. Maybe it's the rest. Maybe it's the herbs. Maybe it's the sheer willpower of not wanting to be bled again. You'll never know. But you do know that if this ever happens again, you'll be crawling into the nearest apothecary and demanding something fermented. And as you finally stand, shakily, on your mildly cursed foot, you realize you survived medieval sprain care. Congratulations. You are now officially tougher than 98% of Instagram influencers. You limp out into the morning mist, your foot still tender, your pride slightly bruised, and your dignity long gone. The village cat watches you, judging, as cats do. You sigh, grateful that, at least for now, your bones are back inside your body where they belong. And you've earned the right to sit for the rest of the day doing absolutely nothing. Because, let's face it, you've been through an era where medicine was 10% treatment, 20% prayer, and 70% dumb luck. But don't get too comfortable. There's still a chapter about what happens if you twist your back, catch a fever, or, God forbid, break your ankle. But for now, rest. You wake up with a suspicious popping noise in your ankle. Again, the same ankle. Because apparently, medieval medicine doesn't include the concept of rehabilitation, and nobody's invented physical therapy yet. There's no stretching regimen, no foam roller, and definitely no ergonomic footwear. Just you, your swollen ankle, and a vague hope that walking on it until it stops hurting counts as recovery. The good news, you're no longer the village's most exciting injury. The bad news, you're now expected to get back to work. Because in the 14th century, there's no such thing as sick leave. Your job, whether it's farming, weaving, or carrying buckets of questionable water from a stream uphill both ways, is waiting. And your boss? A goat. Or a surly reeve who may or may not be dating the goat. It's hard to say. You hobble out into the gray morning light, foot tightly wrapped in a slightly less moldy bandage and smelling faintly of vinegar and crushed rosemary. It's not that anyone thinks you're fully healed. It's just that rest is a luxury reserved for monks, nobles, and corpses. You're a peasant. A very lucky peasant, because you didn't die of foot-related gangrene. Yet. Today's task, fetching water. Because of course it is. The village well is roughly the same distance as the moon and requires navigating cobblestones designed by someone who clearly hated ankles. Every step is a jolt of pain. You try to pretend it's fine, but your grimacing face betrays you. An old woman selling onions eyes you suspiciously. She mutters something about the devil in your joints. You smile politely, which in medieval terms means not stabbing her with a soup spoon. As you drag your cursed limb along the path, a passing friar stops you and asks if you've considered confession. For the ankle. You say thank you, but no, your sins mostly involve impure thoughts about cheese. He doesn't laugh. No one ever laughs. You sigh and limp onward, questioning everything. By the time you return with a half-full bucket and a fully re-traumatized foot, your entire leg is buzzing like a swarm of angry bees. You collapse onto a bench. A bench made of solid oak and zero cushioning. You miss chairs. You miss shoes that didn't feel like wooden prisons. You miss ice packs and ibuprofen. You miss 2025. Your mother sees you wince and decides it's time for another remedy. She pulls out her secret stash, a cloth bag of dried herbs passed down from her great-grandmother, who allegedly once healed a broken nose using only honey and aggressive humming. This bag smells like wet socks and betrayal. She pulls out a few ingredients, comfort root, marjoram, and something that might be a dead beetle. You don't ask. She grinds the herbs with a mortar and pestle that's doubling as a soup bowl and mixes them with warm beer. Because everything in medieval England eventually involves warm beer. It's applied generously to your ankle and then wrapped in a strip of linen that smells faintly of mildew and goat. The pain lessens slightly. Or maybe you're just getting used to suffering. The next day, you're back at it. Because medieval life is a continuous loop of do chores or die. This time you're helping dig a latrine trench. With your bad foot. In the mud. The smell is, let's say, pungent. A rich blend of human waste, rotting straw, and existential despair. You wonder what your modern self would say right now. Probably, where's the hand sanitizer, followed by uncontrollable weeping. But you press on. You adapt. Because medieval people are nothing if not disturbingly resilient. You learn to limp efficiently. You learn to favor your good foot. You start using a stick that is definitely not a cane but absolutely is. It makes you look wise. Or cursed. Or both. As the weeks go on, your ankle slowly starts to regain function. Not because of the treatments, probably, but because your body gave up on complaining. That's how it works here. If you don't die, you live. If you don't heal, you learn to work around it. Medieval medicine is less about curing and more about surviving long enough to forget how much it hurt. Meanwhile, your fellow villagers offer all kinds of unsolicited advice. Rub it with badger fat, says one. You need to chant to Saint Maurice, says another. My cousin had a foot like that. Died screaming, says a third. Uplifting. You get very good at smiling and nodding. It's the medieval version of Googling symptoms and immediately regretting it. One day, while trying to fish a turnip out of the cooking pot with your crutch, you remember something the cunning woman said: the body remembers every injury. You wonder if she meant it literally or metaphorically. Because your body is definitely remembering. Every twitch, every stiffness, every medieval mistake. But you're also remembering how to function. You start to walk again. Slowly. Carefully. Like someone tiptoeing through a field of Lego bricks. The limp is still there, but it's yours now. A mark of survival. A gentle reminder that you are, in fact, living in a world without medical charts, insurance, or painkillers. And then, you dance. Not well. Not even on purpose. But there's a festival in the village square, and someone starts playing a hurdy-gurdy. You're pulled into a circle by a neighbor who insists that dancing will realign your humors. You twirl once, feel a sharp twinge, and immediately regret it. But you don't stop. Because for one fleeting moment, you're not the person with the bad foot. You're just a human in a tunic, spinning under candlelight, laughing in the face of poor choices. Later, your ankle will punish you for this betrayal. It will swell. It will throb. It will whisper threats. But right now, you're living your best medieval life. And that's what counts. Back home, as you soak your foot in lukewarm water with a sprig of thyme and something that might be rat hair, you reflect on your journey. You survived a sprain in an age without anesthesia. You've endured unsolicited prayers, goat judging, and beer-based ointments. You've navigated a medical system held together with superstition and string. And you're still here. Barely. The fire crackles beside you. Your crutch leans gently against the wall. The herbs are drying near the window, catching the faint scent of wood smoke and overcooked cabbage. You feel, for the first time in weeks, calm. Not healed, but calm. Because in the Middle Ages, that's as good as it gets. Now go to sleep. You've earned it. But don't roll over too quickly. Your ankle might fall off. You wake up to the gentle sound of a rooster screaming into your soul. It's not even dawn. The stars are still out. The moon hasn't clocked out yet. And yet, here you are, eyelids like anvils, spine fused into a medieval mattress that smells like a wet sheep who regrets all its life choices. You try to stretch, but your ankle reminds you, politely but firmly, that you are still very much injured and very much not in possession of modern painkillers. Welcome back to another beautiful morning in 14th century Europe, where beautiful means muddy, cold, and vaguely threatening. You sit up, slowly, like a resurrected corpse trying to figure out if the afterlife has room service. Spoiler, it doesn't. Your straw mattress crackles underneath you, and your linen blanket, generously described, slips off your shoulders and lands in a puddle of its own smell. Somewhere between mildew and medieval sadness. You stare down at your swollen ankle. It's doing okay-ish. Not quite foot-shaped anymore, but definitely not purple. Progress. There's a knock at your wooden door, which is impressive, considering your house doesn't technically have one. It's more of a fabric curtain that keeps the outside weather in, and the inside smells trapped like a fart in a tent. Your cousin pokes his head in. He's cheerful. You hate him immediately. "We're gathering firewood," he says. "Thought you might come. Good for the joints." You respond with a noise that isn't a yes, but also isn't a no. It's more of a guttural growl only peasants in chronic pain can understand. He takes that as agreement. You hobble outside, crutch in hand, ankle lovingly bound in what used to be part of a monk's robe. The morning air is sharp, wet, and vaguely full of chicken feathers. There's fog. There's mud. There's someone dumping a bucket of waste out their window and yelling, "Look out below," 2 seconds too late. And you're about to hike into the woods. Because nothing says healing like navigating a dense forest full of roots, rocks, and the occasional wolf, looking for dead branches that don't weigh more than your dignity. The forest is damp. Everything is wet. Leaves stick to your clothes. You can't feel your toes, but you can feel your ankle. Oh, you can really feel your ankle. Every step is a negotiation between you and the universe. "Just one more yard," you whisper. "Then I'll rest." You lie to yourself repeatedly, as is tradition. Your cousin bounds ahead like a golden retriever in human form, completely unaware of your suffering. He whistles a tune about St. Bridget and tells a story about how a man in the next village healed his broken leg by rubbing it with boiled pig's ear. You nod slowly, unsure whether to be impressed or horrified. After several eternities, or about 25 minutes, you finally sit on a log and pretend to inspect some moss. Your cousin doesn't notice. You're grateful. Because the truth is, you're exhausted. Your body feels like someone tried to assemble it from leftover parts, and a goat stepped on the instructions. This is where we pause. Because if you've made it this far and your eyes are still even slightly open, first of all, I'm impressed. Secondly, take a moment, right now, to like the video and subscribe to the channel if this slow, sarcastic descent into historical misery is your kind of thing. And drop a comment with where you're tuning in from and what time it is. I'll be reading them with herbal tea and ankle envy. It's always oddly comforting to know someone in Norway is listening to this at 3:14 a.m. while thinking about leeches. Now, back to the wood. Eventually, you return to the village with a bundle of sticks and a slightly more pronounced limp. You're congratulated by exactly no one. Your mother nods approvingly, which is the medieval version of a standing ovation. She throws a blanket over your shoulders and shoves a bowl of pottage into your hands. You eat. It's mostly barley, a little turnip, and one very suspicious chunk of meat that might be pigeon. It tastes like warmth and mistakes. The next few days pass in a blur. There's no calendar. Just weather and chores. Your ankle goes from mildly possessed to mostly tolerable. You still can't run, not that you ever could. You can't jump, but who needs that? You've graduated to a light shuffle, a proud limp, a victory waddle. One evening, while stirring a pot of something vaguely edible, a visitor arrives. He's a traveling boneman, a self-proclaimed expert in all things skeletal. He carries a sack of tools that looks suspiciously like blacksmith gear and smells faintly of cheese and regret. Naturally, your mother insists he take a look at your foot. You sit on a stool as the boneman pokes your ankle, mutters Latin words, and ties a string around your toes. He listens to your joints. Not with a stethoscope, because that's not invented yet, but with his face very close to your skin. It's intimate and horrifying. His diagnosis? You've angered a woodland spirit and must sleep with a hedgehog pelt tied around your leg for 3 nights under a full moon. You ask if there's a less rodent-based option. He recommends fasting, prayer, and soaking your foot in warm sheep's milk while reciting Psalm 23. You nod slowly and hand him a coin made of tin. He leaves satisfied. Your ankle does not. So, instead of mystical rituals, you stick with what's been working: limited movement, herbal compresses, and the occasional scream into the void. It's not glamorous. It's not fast. But it's working. Ish. Eventually, the reef stops excusing you from field work. You're given a rake and a nod. No one asks if you're ready. They assume you are. Because in medieval society, ready means not actively bleeding. You return to the fields, rake in hand, limp in tow. The sun is hot. The earth is unforgiving. Your ankle protests. Your knees stage a silent rebellion. But you carry on. And somehow, you find a rhythm. One that doesn't ignore your injury, but works around it. A method of movement that lets you survive the day without collapsing in a heap of barley and despair. And isn't that what healing is, in the end? Not the complete disappearance of pain, but the quiet ability to keep going, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. That night, as you settle into your straw bed, now upgraded with 2 layers of fabric that still itch but slightly less, you reflect on your journey. You've faced an injury with no x-rays, no splints, no podiatrist named Steve. You've endured inconsistent advice, magical thinking, and forest adventures. You've navigated life in a time when healing meant guesswork and hope. And yet, you're still here. Not quite healed, but alive. Still hurting, but laughing. And maybe, just maybe, a little stronger for it. Your foot twitches as you drift off to sleep. The fire crackles. The room smells of thyme, old socks, and barley. Outside, the night wind howls through the thatch, whispering lullabies only medieval peasants understand. You roll over gently and close your eyes. Tomorrow is another day. And your ankle? It'll manage. You wake up not to the rooster this time, but to the distinct sensation of your ankle being used as a chew toy by a cat. You don't own a cat. In fact, no one in the village owns a cat. Cats simply exist, and sometimes they adopt you against your will. This one, a three-legged menace named Bartholomew, is licking your bandage with a slow determination of something that's seen things. You kick him off, gently, because medieval cats hold grudges for generations, and sit up. Your ankle throbs. Not in a please amputate me kind of way, but more like a remember me forever dull ache. The kind of ache that becomes part of your identity, like a limp that says, yes, I survived the spring of '38, and no, I will never stop talking about it. You stagger to your feet, stretch your back, mistake, and shuffle over to the fireplace, where last night's stew has congealed into a solid mass of regret. It smells like onion, sadness, and overcooked barley, which, coincidentally, is the name of your favorite pub if you ever invent one. You eat it anyway, because in the 1300s, flavor is a suggestion and texture is an afterthought. Today is market day, which means walking. A lot of walking. Through uneven roads, over mud-soaked paths, and past at least 3 different piles of horse dung. Your ankle complains, of course, but you remind it who's boss. It's not you. But denial is the real medicine here. You tie a new strip of cloth around your joint, a mixture of linen and superstition, and you're on your way. The market is lively, chaotic, and smells like someone tried to bake cabbage and failed violently. Stalls line the town square, selling everything from salted fish to what might be a baked lark or possibly just an unfortunate squirrel. There's music, sort of. A man with a bagpipe is being paid to stop playing, which is a nice change of pace. You're not here to buy anything extravagant. Your coin pouch contains exactly 2 things, a button you found in the road and a pebble you thought looked like a sleeping bishop. But you are here to find knowledge. Specifically, medical knowledge. Not the learned kind passed down from scholars in dusty tomes you can't read anyway, but the real kind, what the people know. What the market healers whisper when no one's listening. What the toothless woman selling boiled goose feet insists cured her cousin's gammy leg. You limp your way to the healer's stall. She's called Mother Gilly, though no one's quite sure if she has any children or if she just materialized one day out of the swamp. Her breath smells like clove and doom. Her stall is filled with dried roots, bones, tiny jars of pickled mystery, and one large toad that seems to be in charge. She eyes your ankle, nods solemnly, and says, "Sprained? Eh? You've got too much cold in your foot. Need balance. Need heat. Need blood to flow, not lurk." You don't know what that means, but it sounds like a threat. She gives you a waxy salve made of mustard seed, lard, and something called blisterwort, which, reassuringly, sounds exactly like what you don't want. She instructs you to rub it in whenever the moon is low and the wind is from the east, which is unhelpfully vague but very atmospheric. She also offers you a charm. It's a small sack filled with goose feathers, dried garlic skins, and what she claims is the fingernail of St. Cuthbert. You question the authenticity. She raises one eyebrow and reminds you that questioning a healer in public is how people end up cursed with persistent flatulence. You buy the charm. Because, let's face it, you're desperate. And also, because it smells a little bit like cinnamon, and that's the closest you've been to joy in weeks. You hobble home, charm tied around your ankle, smelling faintly of swamp and determination. The next morning, something strange happens. You feel better. Not good, mind you. You're not about to go frolicking through the barley fields. But better. Like your foot has stopped actively plotting against you. You can walk with only mild wincing. You can go up 2 stairs before questioning the meaning of life. It's progress. Which means, of course, you're immediately put back on laundry duty. You didn't even know there was laundry duty. But apparently, your mother's cousin's son's wife has too many sheets, and your hands still work, and now you're elbow deep in freezing river water scrubbing what appears to be medieval ketchup out of someone's tunic. Let's talk about that for a moment. Laundry, in this time period, is less routine task and more daily exercise in pain tolerance. There's no soap, really. Just lye made from ashes and the vague hope that friction and judgment will scare the stains out. You scrub, you wring, you dunk, you repeat. Your fingers go numb, your back seizes up, and your ankle decides this was, in fact, a terrible idea. You sit on a rock and stare into the water. You wonder what life would have been like if you were born in a later century. Maybe with shoes that have arches. Maybe a place where spraining an ankle doesn't come with a side order of moral failure. But no. You were born in a time when injuries are viewed through the lens of religion, local gossip, and a suspicious relationship with badgers. Your neighbor waddles over and hands you a jar. She says it's her secret recipe for healing joints. You ask what's in it. Mostly lamp oil, she says. And vinegar. And a little goose bile. But I sing to it. Every Tuesday. You pretend to be grateful. You accept the jar. You will never, ever open it. The days pass. Your limp is less noticeable. The charm is still tied to your ankle. The bandage is cleaner now, though stained with memories. You've added comfort root to your tea. You've stopped questioning things that smell strange because everything smells strange. And somewhere between washing tunics, collecting firewood, and rewrapping your ankle with progressively weirder herbs, you realize something astonishing. You've adapted. You, with your fragile 21st century expectations, have endured several weeks of medieval recovery without dying of infection, witchcraft, or despair. Your body has adjusted. Your limp has style now. You've even started calling it Sir Limp-a-Lot, which makes precisely no one laugh but you. One night, at a communal feast, which is more boiled turnip than actual feast, someone challenges you to a foot race. You laugh. Then you say yes. It's only 50 paces. Just to the old church wall and back. You line up. You brace. You run. Well, run might be generous. It's more of a heroic hobble. But you finish. And you don't fall. And you only slightly pull a hamstring. Which, in medieval terms, is an overwhelming success. Your victory prize is a half-stale oat cake and a slap on the back from a man who smells like fermented onions. You feel proud. You feel triumphant. You also feel like your ankle might detach itself and roll into the sunset, but that's tomorrow's problem. That night, you soak your feet in warm beer, wrap yourself in a blanket made from questionable wool, and listen to the night sounds, crickets, coughing, the occasional scream, probably celebratory. You are a survivor. You are a peasant. You are possibly cursed. But you have made it through. Your body aches. Your ankle throbs. But your spirit? Strangely, beautifully, annoyingly, stronger. Sleep comes easier now. The pain duller. The worries softer. The mattress still smells like betrayal, but you've made peace with that. You close your eyes. Your foot twitches once. And just before sleep takes you, you hear a whisper. Bartholomew, the cat, is back. Chewing on your charm. Because of course he is. You wake up face down in straw. Not romantically nestled. Not cozily curled up like some quaint peasant in a holiday postcard. No, your face is in the straw. Nose full of it. Itchy, pokey, slightly damp straw that smells like fermented goat and maybe something recently deceased. You sit up, wipe a piece of hay from your mouth, and immediately remember why you shouldn't have tried to race that barefoot ginger kid with calves like barrels last night. Your ankle is furious. It throbs like it's being haunted by the ghost of its own dignity. It feels swollen, stiff, and vaguely hot, which in medieval times is not a great sign. You poke it. It responds by threatening to secede from the rest of your body. Fantastic. Outside, the village is already buzzing. Someone's hammering something metal in the distance, a pig is screaming for reasons you'd rather not know, and a group of women are loudly discussing who saw who sneak into whose barn after mass. You limp out into the sunlight, blinking like a mole dragged into social responsibility, and shuffle to the well to splash some water on your face. The water is freezing. It also smells like something died in it last Thursday, but it's cold, so you let it numb your sins. Your cousin spots you from across the way and waves. Too enthusiastically. You consider pretending you didn't see him, but you're wearing the same wool tunic you've had on all week and you are, as they say, distinctively noticeable. He jogs over. You wince in anticipation. We're digging today, he says. New compost trench. You coming. You blink at him. You point at your ankle. He looks at your foot like he's never seen one before. Still, didn't Mother Gilly give you the charm with the feather and goat bone or something? You nod slowly. Yes. It's been marinating in cat saliva since Tuesday. He shrugs. Good enough for me. So you dig. Compost in the 1300s isn't a tidy backyard operation with a little plastic bin that smells faintly of kale. No, it's a pit. A deep, Smelly pit where people dump everything. Food scraps, straw, ashes, bits of clothing, sometimes teeth. Occasionally, a mystery. You're given a shovel. Well, a stick with a vaguely flat end. You wedge your foot into the dirt for balance and instantly regret it. Your ankle cracks audibly, like it's sighing in defeat. But you dig anyway. Because resting in medieval society isn't a medical recommendation, it's a character flaw. Let's pause here, because this is one of the many cruel ironies of recovering from any injury in the Middle Ages. No one cares. Sure, they'll nod sagely and tell you about a cousin who healed a dislocated elbow by eating fermented radish leaves under a gibbous moon, but as soon as you stop visibly limping, you're expected to carry rocks, or chase sheep, or kneel on wet church floors for 3 hours during a candlelit sermon about moral purity and why gout is divine punishment for hoarding cheese. You are, in the eyes of the community, mostly functional again. That means full responsibility, even if your ankle screams otherwise. And so you work, you dig, you haul, you do what medieval peasants do best, suffer publicly with dignity and privately with extreme bitterness. At night, your body feels like it's trying to file for divorce from your soul. Your back is stiff. Your hands are raw. Your ankle, well, it's not purple anymore. That's something. It's more of a yellowish gray now, like old cheese or poorly preserved parchment. To cope, you begin experimenting with treatments of your own. First, you try soaking your foot in warm beer. The same beer you were supposed to share with the household. You do not share it. Your family is unimpressed. You explain that this is for medical purposes. They still do not care. Then you try wrapping it in mashed onions because someone's uncle swears that sulfur pulls out the bad humors. What it pulls out, in fact, is everyone from the room you're in, including the dog. At one point, a visiting merchant suggests urine. Not just any urine, your own. Fresh, he clarifies, as if that improves things. You try it once. Just once. You immediately vow to never again take advice from someone who smells like they bathe in cinnamon and hubris. You turn, instead, to the village priest. He tells you to pray harder, and maybe stop complaining so much. So you do. You sit in the chapel with your foot elevated on a pew, surrounded by incense, whispers, and that one old man who always coughs like he's trying to summon demons. You pray. You meditate. You nearly fall asleep during Mass, and wake up to a lecture about sloth. Eventually, you stumble on something that does help: rest. Glorious, guilt-ridden, barely permitted rest. You fake an illness. Nothing dramatic, just enough to make your mother fuss, and let you sit out the next ox dung hauling shift. You wrap your ankle in warmed wool soaked in elderflower tea, elevate it on a bag of grain, and allow yourself, just for a moment, to do nothing. And it helps. For the first time in weeks, the pain eases. The swelling goes down. You can wiggle your toes without cursing all 5 generations of your ancestry. It's magical, which is probably why you immediately ruin it by returning to full labor the next day. Let's be honest, you had to. You were starting to be called lazy. People were whispering. Did you hear? She's still limping. Probably just trying to get out of threshing. My uncle broke his whole leg and still built a barn with it. Your reputation is at stake. So you suck it up, shove your healing ankle into a wool sock that smells like despair, and head to the fields. There, you meet Gertrude. Gertrude is 78 years old, missing 3 fingers, and the only person in the village more terrifying than the priest's dog. She's been harvesting wheat since before the Black Death and tells you, with complete sincerity, that pain is just the devil's way of keeping you humble. You nod, limping along beside her, and ask what she did when she sprained her ankle. Bit it, she replies. Hard. Twice. Told it to stop whining. You stare at her in silence. She shrugs and goes back to swinging a sickle with the efficiency of a Viking on laundry day. The days stretch on, and slowly, bit by bit, your ankle does heal. Not perfectly. It cracks now when it's cold. It twitches sometimes at night like it remembers the trauma and wants you to. But it's usable, reliable, familiar, even. Your limp becomes part of your gait. People stop noticing. You stop noticing. It becomes a footnote in your life story. One of many aches in a world built on enduring them. But the lessons stick. You've learned the healing power of goat fat and idle gossip. You've learned that medical advice from a woman who keeps bones in a bag may be both terrible and effective. You've learned that sometimes the best medicine is rest, even if you have to lie to get it. And most of all, you've learned that medieval healthcare is, in essence, a beautifully chaotic dance of trial, error, faith, dirt, and hope. It wasn't efficient. It wasn't clean. It definitely wasn't sterile. But it was human. And sometimes, that was enough. You fall asleep that night to the sound of rain on the thatch roof and a cat purring on your newly repaired ankle. You let it purr. You let it stay. Because somehow, in this dirty, painful, exhausting world, you've made it. Still limping, but still moving. Still aching, but still here. And that, in the 14th century, is the definition of a miracle. You wake up this morning in what can only be described as a slightly improved state of disrepair. Your ankle, that once glorious center of pain and betrayal, is now just a dull background character in the play of your physical discomfort. Sure, it still clicks when you bend it and makes a strange popping sound when it rains, but in medieval terms, that's a full recovery. Naturally, this means you're now considered completely healed by everyone around you. Which is unfortunate, because you don't feel healed. You feel like a wheelbarrow that's been fixed with string and a very confident chicken. But that doesn't matter. The village healer has declared you sound of limb after poking your foot once and muttering something about the swelling spirits having dispersed. You weren't aware spirits were involved, but here we are. So, it's time for a new job. A real job. Something that doesn't involve lying in bed, moaning dramatically, and milking sympathy like a diseased cow. No. Today, you're headed for the local tannery. Yes, a tannery, where they make leather from animal skins, with a process that makes your ankle recovery look like a spa retreat. You're not entirely sure how you ended up being sent there. One minute you were helping an old man sharpen his side with your good leg propped up on a log, and the next, someone was telling you that Father Edwin's son's cousin broke both knees last spring and was back to tanning in a week. And now you're here, standing in front of what may be the most horrifying building in the village, a squat wooden shack that smells like boiled nightmares and feet that have been forgotten in a cellar. There's a thin mist around it, probably steam, possibly spirits of the dead animals whose skins are being turned into satchels. You limp inside. The tanner greets you with a grunt. He's wearing an apron that may have once been white, but is now best described as textured. He gestures at a pile of soaking hides and says, "Don't touch your face." Which is alarming. You learn quickly that tanning, much like medieval healthcare, is not for the weak of constitution. It involves soaking animal skins in lime to loosen the hair, scraping them with a dull blade or a sharp rock if you're unlucky, and then, wait for it, soaking them in a mixture of water and dog dung. Yes, you heard that correctly. Dog dung. For the enzymes. There's also human urine involved, collected from chamber pots and sold by those enterprising enough to monetize their bladders. So now, your job, your reward for surviving a sprained ankle, is to spend the day elbow deep in pee water and poop leather. Every breath you take is a choice. Every movement is a test of how much you truly value your sense of smell. You squelch through the tannery yard, your ankle threatening to resign again. The ground is slippery, covered in God knows what, and you think you just stepped on something that blinked. Someone hands you a scraping knife. It's not sharp enough to be dangerous, but just sharp enough to remove your will to live. You begin the process. Soaking, scraping, gagging, repeating. The tanner hums to himself. You want to cry. After 2 hours, you realize you've acclimated to the smell. Not because it's gone, but because your brain has given up. The olfactory section of your mind has packed a bag, written a farewell note, and headed somewhere with lavender fields and less trauma. Lunchtime arrives. You're offered a bowl of stew. You don't ask what's in it. You just stare at it while wondering if you'll ever feel clean again. Your ankle, meanwhile, has decided to swell slightly from all the standing and squatting. So now you're hobbling like a pirate with one bad leg and a personal grudge against fresh air. You ask for a break. You are told, and this is a direct quote, "God rested on the seventh day." You ain't God. Fair. You slink off behind the tannery and soak your foot in a cold stream running nearby. The water feels good. Almost normal. Almost like you're not ankle-deep in a literal medieval biohazard zone. You close your eyes and pretend you're somewhere else. somewhere without smells, somewhere with ice packs and compression bandages, and doctors who don't rub toad saliva on your kneecaps. But no, you're here. So let's zoom out for a second. Medieval people didn't just recover from injuries, they endured them. There was no physical therapy, no orthopedic support, no ergonomic chairs. You sprained your ankle, you rested for maybe a week, then you went back to shoveling cow intestines until your joint stopped complaining. Your community didn't really do gentle recovery. They did walk it off. Or worse, rub this wild boar fat on it and scream into the woods until it stops hurting. And the miraculous part? Sometimes it worked. Not because the treatments were good, but because the human body, when faced with constant physical labor, terrifying hygiene, and a complete lack of sympathy, simply adapts. Like your ankle, which, by the end of your third day at the tannery, no longer throbs with every step. You're still sore. You still smell like regret and wet leather. But your foot has decided that this is its life now. And it's managing. You're walking steadier, bending more confidently, even climbing the ladder into the loft to store dried hides, an act that, just 2 weeks ago, would have ended in a very medieval funeral. That night, you hobble home. The stars are out. The air smells better away from the tannery, less like ammonia, more like smoke and something burning that definitely shouldn't be. You eat your barley mush with gratitude. You soak your foot one last time in lukewarm water with mint leaves. You tie your bandage not for support anymore, but for nostalgia. Because somewhere along the way, you stop needing it. You fall asleep to the sound of the wind rustling through the thatch above your head and the comforting scratch of a rat chewing on something you hope isn't a floor support beam. Your dreams are peaceful. Mostly. Except for the one where you're back in the tannery and the dog dung is talking to you in Latin. You wake up just before dawn. Your ankle is stiff but solid. You've survived another chapter of healing. Another chapter of medieval madness. And in a weird, awful, slightly inspirational way, you're proud. Because recovery, here, isn't a luxury. It's a battle. And you've won this one. You wake up to shouting. This is not the charming medieval equivalent of an alarm clock. No birdsong, no rooster perched on your windowsill with a motivational cluck. No, this is screaming. Human screaming. The kind that implies either someone is in serious trouble or someone dropped a bucket of something important, like holy relics or fermented cabbage. You sit up. Your ankle, the star of the story, lets out a creak like an old door that's seen too much. It doesn't hurt, exactly, but it's testy. Stiff, like it spent the night dreaming about its betrayal and woke up feeling defensive. You flex it. It pops. You sigh. Welcome to the medieval morning. You hobble to the door of your cottage, ducking under the low beam that exists solely to test your skull's durability. Outside, the source of the noise reveals itself, 2 old women fighting with wooden spoons. They're arguing about which one of them has the better healing salve. This is what passes for medical discourse in your time. Their names are Edith and Wolfhild. They are each about 90, possibly 200, and each believes the other is one bad sneeze away from total irrelevance. Both have spent decades perfecting their own unique blend of herbs, oils, and suspiciously acquired animal fats to create what they refer to as miracle ointments, for everything from boils to broken hearts. Naturally, they both heard about your ankle. And now, they want to prove whose salve healed you. You are the battleground. Wolfhild gestures at you with her spoon. She used mine first. The goose grease and yarrow poultice. I saw her limping on the Tuesday, and less on the Friday. Mine is the healing hand. Edith snorts. She used mine last. Which means mine sealed the healing. Yarrow dries it, yes, but I added crushed comfrey, and everyone knows comfrey knits bone. Knits bone. Wolfhild shouts. Knits? You mad hedge witch, it irritates the skin. It's not for skin, it's for sinew. Sinew. You, caught in the middle of this turf war, do the only thing a sane person would do. You fake a limp. Oh, you groan, clutching your ankle. It's starting to twinge again. The effect is immediate. Both women rush you like apothecaries in a Black Friday sale. You're ushered to a bench. Edith begins unwrapping a cloth bundle that smells like overcooked fish. Wolfhild is digging into her apron for a jar that looks like it was last opened during the reign of Charlemagne. You are poked, prodded, sniffed, and smeared. And so begins your unexpected journey into the world of medieval alternative medicine. Let's pause here and explain something important. In this era, the term healing is delightfully vague. It might mean reducing swelling. It might mean invoking the saints. It might mean applying something foul-smelling to a wound and chanting the Pater Noster backwards while facing east. There are herbs, yes. Many herbs. Your average village healer knows dozens by name, smell, and taste. But the way they're used? Often questionable. Sometimes effective. Occasionally life-threatening. Edith, for instance, believes in the power of comfrey, also known as knitbone. And to be fair, it can promote healing in bone and connective tissue. But taken internally, it can also wreck your liver, which in this century is already trying its best to filter out meat and mold. Wolfhild, on the other hand, is a devotee of marigold salve infused in pig fat and wrapped in goose feather bandages. It's soothing, moisturizing, even. Also smells like old feet. But it's popular because it's easy to grow and keeps the skin from cracking under those itchy wool wraps everyone's wearing. And then there's mugwort, which both women agree is good for drawing out evil humors, though no one can quite explain what that means. All you know is, it stings like betrayal and smells like someone burned a forest out of spite. After half an hour of being slathered in conflicting concoctions, your ankle now looks like it's been marinated for roasting. The swelling is down. Mostly because both women rubbed it so hard they may have massaged the inflammation into submission. Wolfhild insists you sleep with her salve wrapped in a warm cabbage leaf. Edith swears by the healing power of bee wax mixed with mashed leeks and prayer. You are allowed no opinion in this matter. That night, you lie in bed, your foot wrapped in a combination of leaves, fat, garlic, something gritty you hope is sand, and at least 3 types of flour. Your entire lower leg smells like an herb garden that's been lightly cursed. You sleep like the dead. And when you wake, you feel better. Suspiciously better. Is it the herbs? Is it the massage? Is it the fact that you didn't spend the day shoveling something that used to be alive? Hard to say. But your ankle is flexible. Almost normal. Your limp, once theatrical, is now more of a polite suggestion. A decorative flourish. You walk to the well and back without looking like a retired gladiator. So you thank the women. Profusely. And from a safe distance, because nothing stirs up conflict like shared credit. The news spreads quickly. People now stop you to ask what worked. You lie and say, both. Because you value peace. And because one of them owns the village's only stash of dried lavender, and you are very tired of smelling like beef fat and onions. In the days that follow, you become the subject of healing lore. She used the comfrey first, someone says. No, another counters. I heard it was holy water and mustard seed. My cousin says she made a deal with a weasel. The stories multiply. Your limp becomes legendary. Some claim you walked again after touching a relic. Others say you were cured after sitting on a rock, blessed by Saint Gilbert, the patron of twisted joints, who may not technically exist. One boy insists you were healed by the touch of a traveling minstrel with mysterious eyes. You let him believe this, because it makes you sound far more interesting than a local peasant, smeared with lard. But beneath the chaos and superstition, there's something oddly heartwarming. Everyone wants you to heal. Sure, the methods are absurd. Yes, the treatments occasionally involve bees. But the sentiment is genuine. Your pain was seen, your limp was noticed, and people, flawed, eccentric, herbal-obsessed people, rallied around you. Which is perhaps the truest form of medicine this world has to offer. The communal kind. Though we all think this is ridiculous, but we'll still bring you soup kind. The kind where healing is messy, but collective. Where knowledge is passed not in textbooks, but in gossip and guesswork and love disguised as stubbornness. So you walk again. Fully. Freely. You help in the fields. You carry buckets. You outpace the chickens. Your ankle bears your weight with only the occasional twinge, like a grumpy reminder of what it survived. And sometimes, late at night, when your body is sore and the world is quiet, you massage it gently with leftover salve, not because it still hurts, but because it feels like honor in the journey. The healing. The absurdity of it all. And when your neighbors ask how you got better, you just smile and say, I slept on a cabbage leaf and prayed very hard. Because sometimes, in this life, that's all you can do. You wake up at dawn to the sound of a bell clanging in the distance. At first, you assume it's the village church calling the pious to prayer. But as your eyes peel open and your mind catches up to your body's ongoing protest, you realize it's not a church bell. It's the blacksmith's anvil, which is somehow worse. Because today, according to your neighbor Aldrich, who has the social grace of a cold spoon against bearskin, you're finally well enough to start strengthening that ankle properly. You blink. Strengthening? Yes. Welcome to the medieval version of physical therapy. Spoiler alert, it doesn't involve elastic bands, slow stretches, or soothing whale sounds. It involves rocks. You've barely had time to choke down your morning gruel when Aldrich appears at your doorway, holding what appears to be a medium-sized boulder. He hands it to you like it's a gift. Time to carry this down to the river and back. You look at it, then at him, then at your ankle, which lets out a silent, horrified whisper. But no one cares about the ankle's opinion. Aldrich nods encouragingly. Well, as encouragingly as a man missing 3 teeth and most of his eyebrows can. Builds strength. Rebuilds trust between foot and earth. You're not sure if that's actual wisdom or if he hit his head once and just kept talking. So you take the rock. It weighs about as much as a small goat. It's rough, jagged, probably once part of a monastery wall or an argument. You cradle it in your arms like a large, judgmental baby and begin walking. The river is only half a mile away. You limp. You sweat. Your foot screams. Your spine threatens to secede from the rest of your body. Halfway there, you stop to rest on a mossy log. Your arms are shaking. Your ankle is developing a twitch. You consider just rolling the stone the rest of the way like a sad, medieval Sisyphus. But eventually, you reach the water. You lower the rock to the ground and sit beside it, panting like a pilgrim who's just realized the Holy Land is uphill both ways. Then Aldrich appears again, with another rock. Good, he says. Now take this one back. And so it goes. This is how rehabilitation happens here. Not through balance exercises or resistance therapy, but through sheer, soul-flattening repetition. Carry a rock. Pick up a sack of barley. Squat to pull weeds. Chase a goose. Limp after a cart. Repeat. There is no physical therapist. There is only Aldrich, who once reset his own finger with a hammer and now believes he's a master of anatomy. He teaches you stretches. And by stretches, we mean squatting while holding a log until your thighs burn and your ankle starts sending apology notes to your knee. You try to explain that pain isn't necessarily progress. Aldrich responds with, pain is the body speaking to the soul. If it screams, it means it's listening. You're pretty sure that's not medically accurate. But your strength does return in its own weird, wood-smoke-scented way. Your foot, once a jelly-like disgrace to your lower half, begins to feel solid, capable, less like a complaint and more like a co-conspirator. One afternoon, you test yourself by standing on one foot for a full minute. You don't fall over. You consider this your Olympic moment. Meanwhile, the village has other ideas about your next steps. Because now that you're healed, your usefulness is being rediscovered like a long-lost cooking pot. The local cobbler asks if you'll help deliver shoes. The brewer wants you to carry grain sacks to the cellar. The priest suggests a penance run, barefoot, of course, to purify the foot. You decline. But the most terrifying request comes from Lena. Lena is your cousin. She's 17, full of rage and wildflowers, and is preparing for the seasonal harvest dance. You forgot about the harvest dance. Which is funny, because your body certainly hasn't. This annual event, held in the clearing near the woods, is both a celebration and a test of ankle integrity. It involves fast, repetitive stomping, spinning, leaping, and an ungodly number of drums. It is, essentially, the medieval version of a CrossFit rave. Lena insists you must dance this year. You'll prove you've healed, she says. Plus, I need a partner who won't throw up after one turn like Osric did last year. So now you're training. Again. But this time, instead of rocks and barley sacks, it's footwork. You practice shuffles, spins, one-leg hops. Your ankle, to its credit, does not immediately betray you. It cracks. It clicks. But it holds. Until, of course, the actual night of the dance. You stand beneath the moonlight, Surrounded by lanterns made of sheep bladders and beeswax, the music already pounding through your chest like a second heartbeat. People clap. Ale sloshes. Someone is definitely stepping on someone else. And then the music begins. Lena grabs your hand. "Don't limp," she says cheerfully, "or the drummer will mock you in rhythm." No pressure. You dance. You stomp. You spin. Your ankle survives for roughly 9 minutes before sending a sharp, clear message that says, "Absolutely not." But you keep going. Because you're being watched. Because Lena is laughing. Because someone tossed flower petals into the air, and now you feel like you're in a folk tale that ends in mild injury and seasonal beverages. By the end of the night, you're sore. But not broken. Your ankle throbs, yes. But it throbs with purpose. With pride. With a collective energy of every tendon, muscle, and ligament that once cursed your name and has now learned to coexist with your bad decisions. You limp home, this time with a satisfied grin. Because here's the secret no one tells you about medieval healing. It's not linear. It's not pretty. It doesn't involve sterile bandages or guided therapy. It's messy. It's painful. It's full of dogma, superstition, and rocks that should not be carried by humans. But it works. Sometimes despite itself. You sleep that night with a cool cloth on your foot, a full belly, and the faint ache of overused joints. You dream of walking through fields with strong legs, of dancing without fear, of rocks that stay where they belong, on the ground. When morning comes, your ankle pops like bubble wrap again. But you smile. Because you're not just healed. You're whole. Even if slightly uneven. You wake up on your side, leg crooked, foot dangling off the straw mattress like it's trying to leave the rest of your body behind. You stretch, gently. There's still a ghost of a twinge in your ankle. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to remind you that healing, like everything in medieval life, is never quite finished. You're like a thatched roof, technically functional, but one bad storm away from catastrophic dampness. You swing your legs off the bed, rub your eyes, and stand. Pop. Your ankle sounds off like a piece of dry wood snapping in a fireplace. You wince. Not because it hurts, because it didn't. And now you're nervous. You've lived in this world long enough to know that nothing healing this well is natural. You half expect a monk to appear at your door with a scroll warning against sudden wellness. Instead, your neighbor Egbert shows up with a boot. One boot. It smells like cow. "I made this for you," he says proudly, holding it up like a trophy. The boot is ambitious. It's made of hardened leather, stitched with thick wool thread, and features what looks like half a wooden spoon nailed into the heel. Egbert is not a cobbler. He is a beekeeper. But, like most people in the 1300s, he dabbles in everything, including unsolicited craftsmanship. You accept the boot because you've learned resistance is futile. Egbert beams. Should support your ankle nicely. Cured the leather in brine and goat urine. Double treated. Won't sag even if you do. Your foot looks at the boot and then back at you. It's trying to say, "Please. Haven't I been through enough?" But you slide it on anyway. It's tight. The interior is lined with something scratchy, possibly horsehair, possibly regret. It doesn't quite match the shape of your other foot, which means you walk like you're arguing with the ground every time you step. But hey, ankle support. Sort of. This is the thing about medieval footwear. It's not so much designed as assembled. Shoemaking is a skill, yes, but it's often treated as a hobby, particularly when your village lacks a full-time cobbler. People walk everywhere, yet no one seems to fully understand the concept of arch support. Most shoes are thin-soled, flat, and shaped like a blunt triangle. Your toes are less cradled and more crammed. But for a healing ankle, shoes are crucial. Without proper support, every step risks a twist, a roll, or an entirely new sprain. Which brings us to an unfortunate, stupidly predictable event. 3 days later, you resprain your ankle. Yes. Again. It happens because of a chicken. Specifically, your chicken, Beatrice, who escapes her enclosure with the speed of a thief and the spite of a toddler. You chase her, naturally, because she's your only consistent source of eggs and emotional support. She darts past the well, behind the cart, and into the vegetable patch. And then, your foot finds a divot. It's not even a proper hole. Just a soft patch in the earth. But your ankle rolls, your balance abandons you, and you drop like a sack of ancient onions. pain. Searing, instant, ridiculous pain. You lie there for a moment, listening to the wind, the faint caw of Beatrice laughing from the hedge, and the disappointed creak of your ego. And just like that, you're back to square one. Your neighbors find you with one sock off, clutching your leg, and muttering what might be prayers or obscenities. You're carried home by two large men and one small child, who insists on holding your hand the whole way while telling you about the time he fell into a mud puddle and didn't cry at all, not even a bit. It's humiliating. It's also familiar. You're wrapped, resalved, and reseated in your straw bed, ankle elevated like royalty. Edith and Wolfhild arrive again, this time in grim agreement that modern walking is to blame for your relapse. They apply a new blend, this one involving vinegar, crushed rosemary, and something they call devil pepper, which they assure you isn't poisonous anymore. Wolfhild mutters a protective chant over your foot. Edith draws a symbol on the door in charcoal to ward off further imbalance. And then comes Brother Cedric, the monk who always smells faintly of turnips and regret. He has heard of your second sprain and is convinced it's the work of demonic influence. Not a metaphorical demon, mind you, a literal one. He asks a series of important questions. Have you walked near any stone circles recently? Do you remember smelling sulfur before the injury? Has your chicken ever blinked with more than two eyes? You answer no. But that doesn't satisfy him. Sometimes, he whispers solemnly, ankles are targeted. The devil enters through the foot. It's how sin travels up the leg. You're too tired to argue, so you just nod. And now you're part of a larger village legend. Apparently, you didn't resprain your ankle chasing a chicken. You were cursed. Some say by a witch. Some say by the ghost of a juggler you once refused to tip. One man claims he saw you spinning 3 times and muttering under your breath, a clear sign of sorcery. A week later, someone paints a red mark on your door. You're not sure if it's a protective charm or a warning. Meanwhile, your ankle swells again. The joint is hot, stiff, and deeply insulted. But this time, you know what to do. You rest. You ice it, with cloth soaked in cold stream water. You elevate it, on a folded sack of wheat that smells faintly of mildew and mouse. You refuse to chase any poultry, demon-possessed or otherwise. And slowly, again, it begins to heal. Your body, annoyed but obedient, goes back into repair mode. You don't try to speed it up. You've learned that lesson. No more dancing. No more rocks. You accept that this journey is shaped like a wheelbarrow with one flat wheel, uneven, creaky, but technically mobile. You sit outside, foot propped up, and watch the world pass by. Children chase each other with sticks. Old men debate whether the recent rain was a blessing or an omen. Someone's goat climbs on someone else's roof. Life continues. And so does your ankle. It bends again. Slowly. Carefully. You test it with cautious weight, like it's a bridge built by a drunk engineer. Each step is a negotiation. Until, one morning, you realize you've been walking around your cottage without thinking about it. No limp. No grimace. No vinegar compress dangling from your foot like a damp sock of shame. You're back. Kind of. With slightly more creaking. And maybe a minor fear of poultry. But back nonetheless. Your neighbors stop offering you salves. They start asking for your opinion instead. What did you do to heal it? You tell them the truth. I fell. I rested. I repeated. Because that's what medieval healing really is. Trial, error, stubbornness, and enough goose fat to lubricate a small ship. The ankle, like life, is an untrustworthy thing. But now, it's yours again. And you're finally, ready to walk without fear. Unless the chicken runs again. Then all bets are off. You wake up to the distant sound of thunder. Or possibly someone falling off a hay cart. Either way, it's a noise with bad intentions. Your ankle throbs preemptively, as if it knows what's coming. The sky is overcast, the air is damp, and your joints are full of unwanted opinions. You shuffle to the doorway, stretch your leg out, and yes, there it is. That tiny, traitorous twinge near your outer ankle. It's official. Your foot is now a medieval barometer. Congratulations. You've joined the ancient and prestigious club of weather bones, a group consisting mostly of retired shepherds, kitchen maids with crooked spines, and that one blacksmith who hasn't blinked in 5 years. In the absence of meteorologists, Doppler radar, or Basic understanding of atmospheric pressure. Medieval people turned to what they had: nature, animals, and their own suspiciously creaky bodies. And among these, the most respected weather forecasters were not monks with calendars. They were people whose bones knew things. Your ankle, once a mild inconvenience, is now your village's storm alert system. When it aches, people nod sagely and gather firewood. When it stiffens, they cancel outdoor weaving circles. When you limp twice before breakfast, someone starts reinforcing the pigpen. It's flattering, and also deeply annoying, because now every ache you feel has been promoted from mild discomfort to apocalyptic omen. It doesn't help that your neighbor, Oswin, is convinced your ankle has mystical powers. You're touched by the sky, he says. Your foot is a vessel of knowledge. You consider explaining inflammation to him. You don't. Instead, you let him bring you offerings, usually weird. A rabbit's foot. A slice of burnt bread. Once, an entire duck feather arrangement tied together with twine. You're not sure if it's meant for good luck, or if he's slowly trying to summon something through you. But let's back up. Because the idea that your body can predict the weather? That's not new. Even in medieval times, people were already cataloging these strange sensations. Monks kept journals not only of crop cycles and moon phases, but of Brother Harold's gout flare-ups. If Harold groaned before dawn, it usually rained by noon. If he shouted and tried to throw a chair, thunderstorm. Even Aristotle got in on the action. He noted how people with old injuries could feel oncoming storms in their bones. Though he said it in Greek, and probably while stroking his beard dramatically. But now that you become the village's soggy-footed sage, people want answers. Will it snow this winter? How long will the rain last? Should I marry into the Miller family or wait for the barley harvest? To be clear, your ankle is not qualified to give marital advice. But people trust it more than they trust actual omens, like 3 crows flying north or that weird time the parish cow mooed during Mass. Still, not all medieval foot wisdom is harmless. Some of it is frankly alarming. Take, for example, the widespread belief that the left foot is unlucky. If you rise and your left foot hits the floor first, bad day. If you stub your left toe, it means the devil has taken notice of you. If your left ankle aches suddenly during prayer, someone nearby has committed sin, or is about to, which means, naturally, your left foot is now suspected of harboring evil. Your right foot? Loyal, hardworking, salt of the earth kind of foot. Your left foot? Suspicious. Possibly hexed. Maybe French. People in your village start watching how you walk. One morning, you make the mistake of adjusting your boot with your left hand and placing it on your left foot first. 3 people gasp. A child starts crying. The village priest gives you a look that says, "Do I need to rebaptize your foot?" And so begins a new chapter in your ankle's life, the exorcism tour. It starts with an herbalist who waves smoke over your foot while chanting in a language she definitely made up. She ties 3 dried thistles to your ankle and tells you to avoid swamps, geese, and people named Reginald. Then there's the elderly nun who insists on pressing your foot into wet clay and leaving the impression outside overnight to draw the spirits out. All it draws is a curious fox and one very confused goose. Finally, a traveling bone setter stops by. He inspects your foot, hums thoughtfully, and declares it mostly intact but emotionally cursed. He prescribes crushed mint, 2 weeks of silence, and a firm relationship with God. You nod politely. Then you go home and soak your foot in lukewarm water, because despite all of this, the joint still hurts. Your healing journey, it turns out, is not linear. It's a long and winding cobblestone path, occasionally interrupted by witch trials and duck droppings. Still, you try to keep things practical. You fashion a brace, nothing fancy. Just a strip of softened leather wrapped tightly around the joint for compression. You've learned to recognize the signs of strain, the dull ache after a long walk, the sharp jab from turning too quickly, the quiet betrayal of cold air. And that brings us, finally, to medieval crutches. Or, as they were known back then, sticks. Because no one in your village has invented adjustable aluminum frames or rubber hand grips. But what they do have, branches. One day, the carpenter's apprentice, sensing your struggle, offers to make you something with balance. What he brings you is a masterpiece of questionable function. It's a Y-shaped stick, slightly crooked, carved from ash wood, and polished with lamb tallow. It smells faintly of smoked ham. It does not stand on its own. But if you lean on it just right, it does offer support. You thank him profusely. Because it helps. Just enough. Crutches and canes in the medieval world were handmade, custom, and highly individual. No two were the same. Some had carved grips, some were padded with wool, some had charms tied to them to ward off evil spirits or to ward off rats, which, let's be honest, are basically the same thing. The very poor might use firewood. The slightly better off might pay a blacksmith to curve a piece of iron. A few noblemen had elegant walking sticks with ivory handles and dangerously sharp tips, because nothing says class like a cane that can also be used in a duel. You are, very clearly, not a noble, but your stick works. And now you have a rhythm. Walk a bit, rest a bit, brace the ankle when it swells, soak it when it crobs, and ignore the neighbor who insists that rubbing a frog on your foot under a full moon will cure all ailments. Your ankle is healing. Again, but differently this time. Not through herbs or rituals or the passive-aggressive supervision of Aldrich, but through something dangerously close to wisdom. You've learned what your foot can handle, what it can't, when to push, when to sit. It's a dance, not a war. And somehow, that's more medieval than anything. Because this is a time of persistence, of mending things over and over, of finding strength in the broken places, not in spite of them, but because of them. So when someone asks you how your foot is doing, you say, "It still hurts when it rains, but I think it's finally mine again." And that's enough. For now.